Ever get that feeling? Like someone's saying one thing, but their body's whispering a totally different story.
It's like we're all sending out these secret signals, right? And most of us are completely oblivious to it.
Totally. And that's what makes this deep dive so fascinating. We're getting a backstage pass basically to a training session for conversational hypnotists.
Oh, wow. So they're like acutely aware of all this stuff, right?
Exactly. They're analyzing this practice session between two trainees, Paul and Ashley, obviously. We had to change the name for privacy. And it's amazing what they pick up on.
Okay, so what's the main takeaway? What's the big secret they're trying to teach these trainees?
Well, get this. They emphasize that most communication, like the vast majority of it, isn't about the words coming out of our mouths at all.
Wait, really? So it's all about like reading between the lines?
It's more like reading between the breaths, the blinks, even the pauses. They're saying only 7% of communication is the actual words we speak.
Wow, 7%. That means what? Like 93% is everything else. That's wild.
It's huge. Tone of voice, speed, those little hesitations.
Yeah.
Even whether someone cracks a joke at the right time or the wrong time, for that matter, it's all giving away way more than we realize.
So basically, we're talking leaks of unconscious information.
Precisely. And this training session, it really drives that point home. There's this one part where Ashley, the client in this scenario, she's talking about wanting to lose weight.
Okay, relatable.
Right. But then she drops this whole thing about having a major weakness for cookies.
Ah, so classic. The old, I want to be healthy, but also pass the Oreos dilemma.
Exactly. And it's such a perfect example, right?
Yeah.
Because on the surface, it's like, yeah, I want to lose weight. But then you've got this deeper desire, this love of cookies that's kind of whispering, but maybe not that much.
Absolutely. And there's little contradictions, those moments where our conscious minds and our unconscious desires kind of bump into each other. That's where things get really interesting.
Totally. So how do these hypnotist gurus, how do they start to tease all of that apart?
Well, one of the things they stress in this training is the importance of spotting these unconscious tells. And luckily for us, they actually break down Ashley's behavior into two main categories: what we hear and what we see.
Okay, let's start with the audio clues. If we're listening closely, what are some giveaways that someone might be dipping their toes into their subconscious?
Pay attention to their pace. Like if they're rattling off a perfectly rehearsed sales pitch, chances are they're pretty conscious of what they're saying. But then when they start talking about, say, the potential downsides and they slow down, start hesitating, that could tell you there's some internal conflict going on.
It's like their inner voice is saying, hold on a sec, are we sure about this?
Exactly. And those inner doubts, they can pop up in other ways too. Nervous laughter is a big one. Or maybe they keep clearing their throat, especially when a certain topic comes up.
Oh, interesting. It's like their body is trying to, like, physically release the tension of holding back.
Precisely. So it's not just about the words themselves, but how those words are being delivered, the subtle cues that leak out along the way.
Okay, that makes total sense. But then there's the visual side of things. I'm guessing that gets even more intriguing.
Oh, definitely. And in Ashley's case, the trainers immediately zero in on the fact that she keeps pausing and looking away at specific moments.
So is it like whenever she's asked a tough question or something?
Exactly. And that makes sense when you think about it. When we're put on the spot, especially about something we haven't consciously resolved, our brain's got to go searching for that information, right? And that search often takes us inward.
So it's like our eyes are literally darting around looking for the answer somewhere deep inside.
Right. It's like our brain needs a minute to do a quick internal Google search. And while it's doing that, our bodies often give us even more clues.
Okay, spill the tea. What else are our bodies up to while our brains are busy Googling?
Well, breathing's a huge one. Think about it. If you're feeling chill and relaxed, your breathing's probably going to be pretty slow and deep. But if you're stressed or anxious, it's going to get all rapid and shallow, right?
Yeah, totally. It's like our breath is giving us this direct line to our nervous system, a real-time readout of what's going on inside.
Exactly. And it doesn't stop there. You might also see physical shifts, like someone might suddenly take off their sweater, even if the temperature hasn't really changed. Or maybe they'll fidget with their jewelry or adjust their posture.
Interesting. So even these subtle temperature changes, they can be clues that something deeper is going on.
Absolutely. They're often unconscious reactions to internal feelings. And then, of course, there's the classic tell, rapid blinking.
Oh, yeah. Like when someone's feeling uncomfortable or trying to, like, bat away a thought or emotion they don't want to deal with.
Exactly. It's like these micro movements. They're constantly trying to express what our words might be trying to hide.
Wow. It's amazing how much our bodies are giving away, even when we think we've got it all on lockdown.
That's the power of the unconscious mind, right? It's always speaking, even when we're not aware of it.
It's incredible. But I got to ask, so how does knowing all of this actually help us, in our day-to-day lives?
It's not about becoming some sort of human lie detector or anything.
Right.
It's about realizing that we all have this capacity to be more tuned in, to pick up on these subtle cues that are constantly swirling around us. And once you start noticing them, you'll be amazed by how much more you understand about the people you interact with every day.
So it's not about like busting people for lying or anything. It's more
Yeah.
about, like you said, being more understanding, more in tune with what's actually going on.
Exactly. And when we can do that, when we can really start to see and hear those subtle cues, it actually makes us better communicators ourselves too, right? Because it's like we're suddenly working with this whole other layer of information.
Totally. Okay, so let's get back to Ashley in this training session. What other little breadcrumbs did the trainers pick up on?
Well, one thing they pointed out was Ashley's use of certain words. Specifically, she kept mentioning time and organization.
Hmm, interesting. So it's not just what she's saying, but like the frequency, like how often she repeats certain words?
Exactly. See, repetition, it often points to something that's significant for that person on an unconscious level. It's like their mind keeps circling back to this theme, even if they don't realize they're doing it.
So if someone's always bringing up like their family or their job or whatever, that could be a sign that there's something deeper going on there.
It's definitely worth paying attention to. It could be that they're grappling with some unresolved issue or feeling in that area of their life, even if they're not consciously aware of it.
Okay, that totally tracks. And sometimes those deeper issues, they might even be like at odds with what someone's saying outright, right?
Precisely. Like in Ashley's case, remember, she's saying she wants to lose weight, but then she talks about loving cookies.
Yeah, that whole have your cake and eat it too thing. But seriously, that seems like a prime example of, what did you call it before? Incongruence.
Exactly, that disconnect. Either between what they're saying and what they actually want deep down, or between their words and their actions.
So how do we help bridge that gap? Like, how can we help someone become more aware of those contradictions?
It all starts with observation and asking the right questions. Remember how Ashley would pause and look away whenever she was asked a certain kind of question?
Yeah, like she was searching for an answer that was buried somewhere.
Right. Those moments, those hesitations, those are perfect opportunities to gently encourage them to go a little deeper.
So instead of just saying, hey, what's wrong? You might say something like, tell me more about that, or
Yeah,
what was it? What comes to mind when you hear that?
exactly. It's about creating that safe space, that invitation for them to really explore their own subconscious without feeling pressured to come to a particular conclusion.
So it's less about playing therapist and more about like holding up a mirror and being like, hey, I see you. I'm here to listen.
Exactly. And as people become more aware of their own unconscious processes, they can start to bridge that gap between what they're saying and what they're truly feeling, which can be incredibly powerful.
Because ultimately, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Building more authentic connections, having a deeper understanding of ourselves and the people around us.
Absolutely. It's a journey of self-discovery. And it all starts with paying attention, not just to the words people are saying, but to those subtle, often overlooked signals that our unconscious minds are constantly sending out.
So it's like we're learning a whole new language, one that speaks volumes, even when our words fall short.
Beautifully put. And the more fluent we become in this language, the more we can create genuine connection and understanding in all areas of our lives, which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Okay, so let's dive into some more of those signals, those unconscious cues. What else should we be on the lookout for?
Well, we've talked about speech patterns and those fleeting micro-expressions, but have you ever noticed how someone's breathing can change depending on what's going on around them?
Now that you mention it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like sometimes I catch myself taking these big, deep breaths before a presentation or something.
Exactly. Our breath is directly connected to our nervous system, right? So if someone's feeling anxious or under pressure, their breath might become shallow and rapid.
And if they're feeling more zen, more relaxed, it'll be slower, deeper.
Precisely. It's like our bodies are constantly giving us these little clues about what's happening internally, even if we don't consciously register them.
It's like our breath is a secret message to everyone else in the room, telling them exactly how we feel, whether we want them to know or not.
In a way, it is. And it's not just our breathing either. Think about it. Have you ever noticed someone's face turning bright red when they're embarrassed? Or maybe even a slight flush when they're attracted to someone?
Oh yeah, totally. So we're talking about changes in skin color now.
Exactly. See, those kinds of physiological changes, they're often totally beyond our conscious control, which makes them all the more telling.
It's like our bodies have a mind of their own sometimes.
In a way, they do. And the more we can learn to pay attention to those subtle shifts and signals, the more we're able to understand the full picture of what someone is communicating.
So it's not just about their words, but also how those words are delivered and how their bodies are reacting in that moment.
Exactly. It's about tuning into the whole person, not just the verbal part of the equation.
Because as we've seen from this hypnotist training, those nonverbal cues can be seriously loud.
They really are. They're the whispers of the unconscious mind, revealing all sorts of hidden truths and unspoken emotions.
And once you start to pick up on those whispers, it's like a whole new world opens up. You start to see things you never even noticed before.
It's true. And speaking of those hidden signals, let's circle back to those fleeting expressions we were talking about earlier. The ones that flash across our faces for a split second.
Those micro
Yeah,
expressions.
exactly. Those are like little lightning bolts of pure, unadulterated emotion.
But because they happen so fast, they're easy to miss, right?
Totally. But even though they're fleeting, they can tell us so much about what someone's really feeling, even if they're trying their best to conceal it.
So what are some examples of these micro expressions? Like, how can we learn to spot them in the wild?
Well, a furrowed brow, that's a common one. That can indicate confusion or maybe deep concentration. A crinkled nose often signals disgust. And then you've got the classic tightening of the lips, which can be a sign of anger or frustration.
And all of this is happening in a fraction of a second. It's like our faces are literally betraying our true thoughts before we even have time to process them.
Exactly. And that's what makes them so fascinating to study, right? Because they offer us this glimpse into the unconscious mind, this raw, unfiltered expression of what's really going on inside.
Wow. It's like our faces are hardwired to express our emotions, even if we try to override the system.
That's exactly it. And the more we learn to read those signals, those subtle facial cues, the better equipped we are to navigate our social world with greater empathy and awareness.
Because understanding those unspoken messages, those little flashes of emotion, it can make all the difference in our interactions.
Absolutely. It's about connecting with people on a deeper level, beyond just the surface of their words.
And that connection, that deeper understanding, it all starts with paying attention to the language of the unconscious.
Yes. The whispers of the body, those fleeting expressions, the subtle shifts in energy. That's where the real magic happens.
I love that. This is amazing. I feel like I'm already starting to notice these things more just by talking about it.
That's the beauty of it. Once you start paying attention, you can't unsee it. It's like this whole new dimension of communication suddenly comes alive.
So where do we go from here?
Yeah.
How do we actually start applying all this newfound knowledge in our everyday lives?
It's simple, really. Just be more present, more observant. When you're interacting with someone, really see them. Listen to not just what they're saying, but how they're saying it. Notice their body language, their breathing, those fleeting micro-expressions.
So it's not about like turning into some kind of mind reader or anything. It's about fine-tuning our senses, becoming more attuned to the subtle cues that are already all around us.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that communication is this incredibly rich, multi-layered experience. And there's always more to learn, more to discover.
This deep dive has been incredible.
Well,
Seriously, I feel like I've learned so